You mentioned I think you were 18. That's the other comment that a lot of people make aboard when they visit Midway is they're flabbergasted. The average age approximately on Midway was 19. Now they always talk about one of our favorite wisecracks, so to speak, is to say, can you imagine your son at home who's 19 having the kind of responsibility that these 19-year-olds had on a Midway, and they roll their eyes and so on. And I'm going to tell a quick story. I don't think Riley remembers this, because I don't think I've ever told him the story, repeated to him the story he told me. But this was back in the 90s. We were somewhere at night having a cocktail somewhere, at a bar somewhere. And I was telling him the same kind of story about people who are flabbergasted about 18, 19-year-olds, and that they must have been very special back in the day and not like the kids today and so on. And Riley said, you know, every 18 and 19-year-old, by and large, is capable of this, of every generation. And he said, you know what the key is? You know, and he said, you give me, back in those days, a 19-year-old young man, and get him away from the family for 8, 12, 16 weeks in boot camp, and you'd be amazed at what 19-year-olds are able to accomplish. I said, all right, I'll grant you that. And then he paused and he said, honestly, get them away from mom for 6 to 18 weeks or whatever, and you'd be amazed at what they can accomplish. So it's an interesting perspective. You were 18. What was it like having not served at the age of 19 in a city of 19-year-olds?
I made second class petty officer when I was 19 years old, and I was put in charge of the radar repeater gang, the indicators. And my total count of equipment was 155 pieces of electronic equipment. I had 7 people working for me, and I guess I just turned 20. And I didn't see anything unusual about that. I mean, hell, I was 20 years old. How old do you have to be to do something like that? I was second class. I could lick my weight in Wildcats. When I came aboard the ship, you know, I was a graduate of ETA school. I knew all this stuff. They put me on the CCA radar. And the second class, who was in charge of that, he said, here's the manual, go study it. When you think you know this radar, you let me know. And so I studied it for about 2 days, and I came down, and he said, okay, here's your problem. You've got good targets from 3 miles out, but no targets inside 2 miles. He said, what's wrong? I said, I don't know. He said, go study and come back. I came back 2 days later and I said, somebody's misadjusted the manual game control. He says, it's your radar. And he never worked on it after that. The entire time he was on the ship, it was my radar. You know, it was incredible. The growing up experience, I go back to that over and over again, it was just amazing at the responsibility that I took on as a kid, and it didn't seem that awe-inspiring. It wasn't that big a deal. Everybody else was the same age as we were, and everybody else did their jobs. I'll tell you, the guys I got respect for, I mean, infinite respect, the guys who worked on the roof. I was an inside dweller. I worked inside, and the guys that worked down in engineering made this ship go, and the guys that worked on the roof, they worked under incredibly difficult circumstances. You think if it's a day like today, no big deal. But when it's nighttime and it's raining, and you know, these guys did very, very dangerous jobs. When I was on the ship, they didn't get hazardous duty pay. There's no extra pay for being on the flight deck. Now they do. They recognize. The thing that dawned on me one day, though, is that we carried, I think with the air group aboard, we had about 3,600 men. And it wasn't 3,600 men, it's 3,600 teenagers. They could eat their body weight twice a day. You know? Can you imagine cooking for that crew?
Oscar.
Sir.
Is there a particular story you've told about your time either aboard Midway or in the Navy, other than to your family 412 times, I'm sure, that surprises people?
That'd be a tough one. I mean, every single day, the new story when we're aboard. It's just getting around on the ship. Like I said earlier, you know, as far down as I got was the second deck, and as far up as I got was the 07 level where we did our lookouts. I guess the one story that holds dearest to me, or holds nearest to me, was the day that I walked off the ship in the Philippines. We came off Yankee Station. I had an approval for an early out. I was accepted to go to school back at the state here. About 5 days. About 5 days out of. About 5 days out of Subic, we received notice from SecNav that everybody had been extended. Everybody on the ship, there was, I think, a 90-day extension for everybody. Nobody was going to get out. And then about a day later, I got notice that if you had an early out, that your early out was good. And the day that I walked off the ship was September 1st. 1965, walked off the ship in the Philippines, walked down to the main gate. They sent me over to Clark Air Force Base, and I was on a Boeing 707 MATS flight on the way home. And I thought about that date many, many times after I got out. And I thought, 1981 came around, and I said, if I'd stayed in, I'd be retired today. 1991 came around and I said, if I stayed in, I'd have 30 years. I said, I'd be on Easy Street. And here I am at 77 and still working. So there is no Easy Street. So, but I had many, many, many regrets that I didn't stay in, that I I don't want to say I wasn't smart enough. I managed to get through school in 3.5 years and have had a good life since then. But I also think that what I missed out on all the camaraderie, the good fellowship that you get from having an organization like this, all the people that are in here. Some of us retirees, some of us did a 2-year stint, a 4-year stint, but it's a good feeling to know that we're all still a brotherhood. Well put.
Wayne will continue that same theme. Any regrets looking back?
The only regret I have is I didn't stay in. It was hard. It was hard work, but you take, what gets me is you take an 18 or 19-year-old, like Bob says, and you're in charge of communication throughout the world aboard an attack aircraft carrier. Now think about that for 18 years old, and you can talk to the world. Then we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. We went through that. Then we had the bombing of the embassy in Saigon. All those things that went on at the time we were in. We never was quite Yankee Station, but we sure operated in the Gulf of Tonkin a lot. And we just, just had good times. We had the good times and we had the bad times. And I like to talk about the good times. And there were a lot of them.
Thank you. Bob, you know the question, regrets, do-overs?
I guess that, I stayed in the reserve, and people were confused by the scrambled eggs. I was lucky we got in the right place at the right time. After 10 years, I was a chief, and they offered me a commission, and I took it. I said, when I got my scrambled eggs, I got most of the prestige back that I lost when I lost my chief's hat. I put 2 years on Roosevelt. Most of the time I was an E4. The majority of the time I was on here was a third-class petty officer. I couldn't believe the difference between being rated and non-rated. I mean, as a non-rated, I just assumed that everybody got dumped on. And I realized that when you put on your crow, some of that changed. You became the dumper rather than the dumpee.